Yeah. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the second session of the live coaching classes of Paper 8 Indirect Tax Laws. I'm sorry for the slight 5-minute delay. There were some technical issues at my side. I saw some queries saying that were you not connected to the internet? You were all very much connected to the internet. There was a slight delay here due to a technical snag. So welcome all of you, and I hope all of you have attended the first class, that is day before yesterday. We covered the basics of GST, the difference between direct and indirect taxes. We also saw the concept of how the utilization of credit happens in GST. We also saw the constitutional provisions, and then we came to the second chapter and we covered some multiple definitions based on which what we are going to cover today's topic, that is the concept of supply. Now, why is the concept of supply very important to us? Because the supply word itself is the incidence of GST. That is, it is the taxable event when the GST will be levied when supply occurs. So that is why we have to be very careful and understand what exactly supply is and when the GST will be applicable. So going forward, we saw all of this. We went through all these definitions in the previous session. If anyone is listening to the class for the first time, I would seriously suggest you to please watch the session on 10th April also. It is there, the recording is there. Please go through that. We had covered all these definitions. So we now straight away come to the section 7 is what is the section which is covers the GST supply concept. So chapter 3 of CGST Act 2017 covers supply. Everyone please remember, section 7 is the section which covers the GST. Section 7 of the CGST Act 2017 covers the term supply. So here we will read these particular section 7 in a combination with three schedules to the CGST Act, wherein multiple cases are given. Here we will see the concept of course or furtherance of business and also the concept of consideration at length. Then we will get more clarity as to what exactly is the trigger for the GST concept. Before that, let me see if there is any queries from last class sessions. Good evening, Viraj. Good evening, Sriram. Good evening, Syed. Good evening, Prashant. Good evening, Jibin. Nice to see all of you attending the sessions. I hope the same momentum continues. Usually what I see in the live coaching classes, after 3 to 4 classes, somewhat the attendance strength reduces. I would seriously request you not to do that. Please plan your studies properly so that you are able to cover each and every session. I presume most of you are writing in November 2023, so you have enough time. And in case you have not covered an elaborate GST classes, this has to be on your to-do list, and make sure that you complete the entire live coaching classes dedicated to the indirect tax laws. Fine. So therefore, moving on to the definition. If you see the word supply, it starts off with the word includes, which means that it is an inclusive definition. That is, the word supply is too vast. It is too huge to be restricted to only certain events. That is why it is a inclusive definition or an illustrative definition. That is why it includes the term includes. Supply includes all form of supply of goods or services or both, such as. So it says supply includes all form of supply of goods or services. That means as students, as a person who is reading this section, you are already expected to have a generic understanding of the term supply. So what exactly is supply? If you are providing something to another person, that is a generic meaning of supply, providing something to the other person. So whether it is goods or services, it all totally depends on that particular transaction. So therefore, it says, the definition says that supply includes all forms of supply of goods or services or both, such as. So the term such as is important here. That means he gives the various instances of transactions which are supposed to be considered as supply. So it includes all forms of supply of goods or services or both, such as sale, transfer, barter, exchange, license, rental, lease, or disposal. So totally 8 activities are covered in the definition of the term supply. So 8 activities are covered. These 8 activities are important for us to understand. So what all are the various activities which are covered? Sale, if you're selling something to a particular person. Transferring, if you're transferring the ownership of something to a particular person. Barter, if you're giving something to a person and getting something else in return, that is a barter. Then exchange means you're giving something and also you're giving a non-monetary consideration. Like if you're purchasing a brand new car and you have an old car, you give that old car plus some money. So therefore that old car giving is an exchange here. License is a right to a particular product or service. Rental is, of course, all of you know, if you take a premises on rent for the agreement to use that premises for a particular period of time, you take that. Lease is pretty similar to rental, but lease also includes immobile properties, lands, open lands, etc. Or disposal. Disposal is if you are using some asset for your business for a considerable period of time. Later, you don't need that asset. It has exceeded its useful life. So then you dispose that asset to some other person. So disposal. So these are the 8 terms which are covered in the definition of supply, which you have to remember. Made or agreed to be made for a consideration by a person. So therefore, this supply should be made or agreed to be made. So please remember, please bear in mind, agreement to make the supply also is a supply. So it doesn't mean that the supply should already have been made. If there is an agreement to make the supply also, it comes under the term supply. For a consideration, we saw the definition of consideration in the previous session. Consideration means what? To get something in return. So if you're supplying the goods or services and you get something in return, that is called as a consideration by a person. Person definition also we have seen. In the course or furtherance of the business. Business definition also we have seen. So this, why we covered those particular definitions in previous session, because those definitions are being used in the particular section. So therefore, these 2 terms are very, very important in the definition of supply. Please make a note of it. The first aspect, what is important is for consideration. Made or agreed to be made for a consideration by a person. Second, in the course or furtherance of the business. So these 2 are the important keys which are there in section 7 subsection 1 clause A. Please bear in mind that these 2 keys are also, there are exceptions to these 2 keys, which are there in 7 subsection 1B and 7 subsection 1A. So therefore, please bear in mind that this consideration in course or furtherance of the business is the generic rule which is there in 7.1a. It does not mean that in order to be a supply, it has to be, there has to be a consideration, or in order to be a supply, it has to be in course or furtherance of the business. 7.1a only covers that particular point. That is all forms of goods or supply, such as these 8 activities, made or agreed to be made for a consideration by business in the course or furtherance of the business. That is your 7 subsection 1 clause A. We will analyze each of these in the coming slides. Now we come to 7 subsection 1 clause B. As I told you, 7 subsection 1 clause A includes the term consideration as a mandatory prerequisite for supply to occur. So 7 subsection 1 clause B here clearly excludes one of the prerequisite which is there in 7 subsection 1a. What is that? That is whether or not in the course or furtherance of the business. That means there is one activity which is covered in 7 subsection 1 clause B. That activity, even though it is happening, that activity, even though it is happening for a consideration, the thing is, it need not be is in the course or furtherance of the business. So therefore, importation of service for a consideration, that is, you're importing a service. What do you mean by import of service? You're sitting in India and you're procuring your service from some other person outside the country. So when you're procuring that particular service, it doesn't matter whether it is for your business or whether it is for your personal consumption. Still, it comes under the supply. A classic example here is your Netflix. You have a Netflix subscription and you pay that Netflix subscription online. That goes to Netflix USA. So the moment it goes for Netflix USA, you are importing the service of the watching this movie streaming on your device, for which you are doing it for your personal purposes, but still it is a supply and GST is triggered. So that is your 7 subsection 1 clause B. 7 subsection 1 clause C Similar to how 7.1b gives an exception to the course or furtherance of the business, 7.1c gives an exception to the consideration. That is, even though there are no consideration, even though there is no consideration, these activities are to be treated as supply. What are those activities mentioned in Schedule 1? Please make a note immediately. Schedule 1 to Section 7, Schedule 1 appended to the CGST Act 2017 covers the activities made or agreed to be made without consideration. So this supply includes these also. So Schedule 1, please bear in mind that all the activities which are made or agreed to be made without consideration also are covered under supply as per 7 subsection 1 clause C. Then 7.1 capital A is Schedule 2, which talks about activities to be treated as supply of goods or supply of services as per Schedule 2. That means there was a major controversy prior to GST being coming into the picture. There was a major controversy which said that whether it is a supply of goods, whether it is a supply of services. What are the examples for the same? The examples are restaurant services. If you go to the restaurant, you order the food, at the same time service component is there where the waiter serves the food on your table for your consumption. So therefore both goods and services are there. Similarly, catering, similarly works contract, construction contract, where material and labor both are involved. So there was also always very big litigation in the previous law before GST, whether it is a goods, supply of goods, or whether it is a supply of service. So that controversy has now been put to rest in GST by virtue of Schedule 2, which clearly says whether it is supposed to be a supply of goods or to be a supply of services. That is given under 7.1 capital A. So this was the situation prior to, this was the situation right from the GST law when it came into force. Then there was a recent retrospective amendment which has occurred. What is this retrospective amendment? If you see, there was always a very long drawn litigation or a long drawn debate or argument on taxability of club or associations. What do you mean by taxability of club or associations? Let us look at a situation. An example here is ICAI. ICAI is an example. Services to its members. Okay. ICAI provides the services to its members, right? This is the first situation. Now, always there is, let me slowly take you to the principle of mutuality. That is when you will understand this better. What is the principle of mutuality? That means the club or association and members provide services for the mutual benefit of each other. So therefore, it is not covered in income tax. So whatever services are there by way of principle of mutuality, in income tax, it is exempt. Same way, in services, there was a long drawn argument which went right up to the respective Supreme Court, which in service tax scenario, wherein they said the case was there's not supposed to be any service tax on the members' subscriptions received by the club from its members. This was the issue which was going on. Later, the Supreme Court said that whatever it is, both the members and the clubs are the same. Therefore, there should not be any service tax. So that was the situation before. But now what has happened? Now what has happened? Here in GST, the section has clearly been added. That is, if any goods or services are provided by the respective association or body of persons to its members, then it has to be a supply. That is your 7.1AA, which says that activities or transactions by a person other than individual to its members or constituents or vice versa for cash, deferred payment, or valuable consideration. So very important from exam point of view. You will be definitely asked any question on this. Please make sure you write. It's not there in your study material, but it is there in your supplementary study paper, which is released by the CA Institute. So therefore, this is very important, right? So I hope this is clear. 7.1AA has been introduced to make sure to tax all the goods and services. What does this mean? This first point, earlier in Schedule 2, which we are going to see now, Schedule 2, what does it say? It says activities which are goods and activities which are services. Schedule 2 says that supply of goods by clubs to its members are to be treated as supply of goods. That means supply of goods were being already included in the Schedule 2. Supply of goods by the association to its members. Example, if you take Hyderabad Golf Club, there is a golf club here in Hyderabad which provides the golfing facilities. So they supply the golf balls and the bats to the respective members. So therefore that was taxable as per this para 7. But now para 7 has lost its relevance because it has totally been removed. Why it has removed? Because this respective supply of services and goods are specifically given in 7 subsection 1 clause AA. That was specifically given, due to which it is clearly mentioned, and therefore this 7(1) AA has been covered in this particular point. So I hope this issue is clear for you. Let me see if any queries here. Yeah, so an example based on this, as I told you, if you look at, let us look at the ICI for the example. ICI provides multiple services to its members. The ICI collects the members' subscriptions on an annual basis. There was a dilemma, there was a litigation and argument whether the same was subject to service tax, because ICI comprises of its members and both the ICI and members are one and the same because of the principle of mutuality. This 7(1) AA has been added in the GST law, which clearly says that any supply of goods or services by the club to its members is a supply and subject to GST. Right? This is the amendment which has been carried out, and please bear in mind, this is a retrospective amendment, which is more clarificatory in nature. It clearly says that here the services supplied by the clubs to its members are very much chargeable to tax. I hope, Purnima, you got clarity regarding the same. So that was, this is very, very important from your exam point of view, and make sure you understand this carefully. Now we go to 7 subsection 2, which says that notwithstanding anything contained in subsection 1, so whatever may be contained in subsection 1, the activities or transactions specified in Schedule 3. So Schedule 3, what does it say? It covers a list of activities which are neither a supply of goods nor a supply of services. So therefore, it covers multiple activities where it is neither a supply of goods nor a supply of services. That means it is not subject to GST. So these are covered in Schedule 3. So activities or transactions specified in Schedule 3, in which such activities undertaken by central government or state government or local authority as notified shall be treated neither as supply of goods nor as supply of services. So two types of activities are covered in the Schedule 3. One, the activities or transactions which are clearly mentioned in the schedule, and number two, it also covers the activities or transactions undertaken by the central government, state government, local authority as may be notified by the government. These are all neither a supply of goods nor a supply of services. Fine. Apart from this, there is also a residuary provision in section 7, which is section 7 subsection 3, which says subject to the provisions of subsection 1, 1A and 2, the government on the recommendations of the council specify by notification. So apart from these, the government also can specify by way of notification the transactions which are to be treated as supply of goods and not as supply of services, or supply of services and not as supply of goods. So this is the residuary provisions subject to the provisions which are covered under 7(1)(1)A and 2. This provision also is included, wherein the transactions can be clearly clarified by the government whether it is a supply of goods and not a supply of service, and a supply of services and not a supply of goods. So that is your residuary provision, that is your 7 subsection 3. Janki doubt. Earlier the same was in Schedule 2 and now as 7(1)AA. Schedule 2 covered only supply of goods. It said that supply of goods which are given by the club or association to its members are to be treated as supply of goods. It didn't cover services. It didn't cover services. So therefore, that is why now there was an ambiguity whether the services provided by the club to its members are taxable or not. To resolve that ambiguity and to make sure it is crystal clear, section 7(1)AA has been added. I hope that is clear, Janki. Moving forward. So therefore, let us analyze what all is covered in section 7. The term supply is defined in an inclusive manner. We have already seen that supply includes all forms of supply, such as those 8 activities are given. So this is mentioned in an inclusive manner, and the same provisions are made applicable to IGST also by way of section 20 of the IGST Act 2017. As I told you, IGST law covers the provisions with relating to the interstate supply of goods or services. So there also the same definition is there by virtue of section 20. So what are the ingredients of supply here? The supply should be of goods and services, number 1, and it should be made for a consideration apart from schedule 1, because schedule 1 also covers importation of service not importation of service, but activities where you're making it without consideration, those are also treated to be as supply. That is written in schedule 1. It should be in the course or furtherance of the business. Certain exceptions are given here. What is the exception there? Importation of service. Should be made by a taxable person and should be a taxable supply. So these are the ingredients of supply by virtue of 7 subsection 1 clause A. 2(107) defines the term taxable person. Who is a taxable person? It means a person who is registered or liable to be registered under section 22 or 24 of the CGST Act 2017. Okay, crystal clear. So therefore, any person who is registered or liable to be registered. When is he liable to be registered? When his aggregate annual turnover crosses the respective threshold of 20 lakhs or 40 lakhs as the case may be. This clarity you will get more in your registration chapter when it is covered in your classes. Barter and exchange are also covered with the definition of supply. What is barter? Barter is something where you give anything in return for some other thing, right? Let me give you an example here. Now, I am a chartered accountant providing the services of GST and income tax advisory to my clients. And I am staying in a rented premises and I'm paying a rent every month to my landlord. Now, when I pay every month to my landlord, and also my landlord, he gets his company's accounts managed by me. So therefore, I am charging him, say, 50,000 rupees per month for maintaining his accounts, and he is charging 50,000 rent for me. So I am not paying anything to him. He is not paying anything to me. Does that mean there is no GST? Please bear in mind, GST is very much applicable here. Of course, the turnover is less than 20 lakhs. So just don't keep, because I gave you an example of 50,000. 50,000 into 12 is 6 lakhs. GST registration is not required. That logic is correct. But let us assume here, it is instead of 50,000, it is 5 lakhs. Then it is 60 lakhs, which is more than the threshold. So I am not paying and he's also not paying. But the government is getting a loss of revenue because of this. That is why to plug this loophole, the word barter also has been clearly indicated in 7 subsection 1 clause A. I hope this is also clear. And exchange, what is the difference between barter and exchange? Can anyone tell me? What is barter? What is exchange? Whether it is the same? Can anyone tell me that? The difference between barter and exchange. Let me see if anyone are giving any inputs on this. Janvi, sir, valuation of supply under 7(1)AA will be accordance with section 15 or under rules. Valuation will always be under 15 on. It is always under 15, section 15. If it is as per market value, then fine. If it is less than market value, here related persons are there. If they are related persons, then you go to the valuation rules and go as per the open market value. Section 15 is the thumb rule for valuing the supply. I'm waiting for answers on the difference between barter and exchange. so that I see how you have understood these two concepts. What is barter and what is exchange, or whether it is the same? How many of you feel it is the same? Exchange cash plus an item for another item. Okay, very good. Then Kaushiki, exchange involves partly monetary consideration also. Okay. See, the main motto here of exchange is not to purely get some other thing. The main motto of exchange here is you have that facility suddenly. Example is, if you are purchasing a new vehicle, you have an old vehicle. You anyways have to sell your old vehicle. So rather than selling your old vehicle, you give it to the dealer instead. That is an exchange. The intention was never to give your old car and get something else in return. The intention was always to procure a new car, and exchange formed an auxiliary activity because of this particular dealing or transaction. But in barter, it is not that. Barter is there was never an option of giving the money in return for the goods or service. From day one, it is clear that I am giving a service or goods and I am getting a goods or service in return. I am not getting any money in return here. So therefore, I hope this is very clear for you, the concept of barter and exchange. Then 7.1b includes importation of service, whether or not in the course or furtherance of business. So why was the logic behind putting 7.1 subsection B? Why is suddenly for this particular activity, whether or not in course or furtherance of business is covered? If you see, due to the digitization of the world, procuring the services from outside the country has become a very common occurrence. It can be something like a software subscription. It can be something like a movie streaming subscription. It can be anything whatsoever. So if I am benefiting a foreign company by procuring his products, why should the government be at loss? Because the concept of GST is always a destination-based consumption tax. If the goods or services are being consumed at the respective destination, 100% the Indian government needs to have some sort of tax collected with regard to the same. So because of the digitization, a lot of importation of services kept happening and the government started losing the revenue. So therefore, they plugged this loophole by saying that if you are importing the service, whether or not in course or furtherance of the business, that is secondary, you have to pay the GST on that. GST has to be discharged. That is the rule, and that is why it is a supply. So Schedule 1, what does it mean? As I told you, covers the supplies even though made without consideration, major departure from the prior indirect tax regime. What does this mean? When supplies are there made without consideration, this was never the case in service tax and VAT, which was there prior to GST. Always consideration was a fundamental requirement for any indirect tax prior to GST. But GST has marked a major departure where it said that the supplies, even though without consideration, are to be treated as supply. Why did this happen? You are running a furniture shop. You are selling to your customers. Your brother wanted one dining table. You gave one dining table from your store free of cost. Where is the GST discharge on that? Is it not a loss to the government? That is why certain instances, that is supply to related person, are covered in the respective Schedule 1. So Schedule 1, supplies made without consideration are also covered. Fine. Then what are the forms of supply? As I told you, sale and transfer. Sale is very, very clear. You're selling any particular product or you're selling any particular service. It is a supply. Barter exchange, we just saw. Transfer. What is transfer? Transfer is transfer of ownership of one particular product from you to the other. You're owning a property. You want to sell that property. You transfer the ownership to some other person. The property stays where it is because it is immovable. So that is your transfer. Then anything other than goods and services outside the scope of supply. Very clear. Supply includes all forms of supply of goods or services. So apart from goods or services, nothing is covered in supply. License, lease, rental, etc. Again, this is also very clear. License, I have a license over, say, artwork. I am allowing that artwork to be used in a movie. I'm transferring the license to him for some time and charging a fee for that. That is your license. Lease, I'm taking a lease of a ground, a lease of an open plot of land, and I'm building a cricket ground on that. Cricket ground lease are usually for 10 years, 15 years. That is lease. Rental is slightly for a smaller period. Fine. So this is basically these three. And license or lease, transferring the goods with or without the right of use, is treated as supply of service. Sometimes it is the leased goods are transferred without the right to use. Sometimes it is transferred with the right to use, where the ownership sometimes passes at the end of something like a hire purchase agreement. That is treated as a supply of service as per Schedule 2. We will see Schedule 2 shortly. So, Swati ma'am, are you there? Just give me 1 minute. I think someone from BOS has logged in, and there's some disturbance coming. So let me call them and ask them to. Yeah, they've muted themselves. So that was your license, lease, rental, etc. Then the supply should be for consideration and should be in the course or furtherance of the business. So these two ingredients, that is the consideration as well as course or furtherance of business, is to be covered in 7 subsection 1A. Fine. So some examples here. Before that, let me see if there are any queries. Barter doesn't include extra money, but exchange includes extra money. Correct. Barter means exchange of same value goods. Correct. Barter is goods to goods exchange, replacing old with new. Partly correct. Without money involvement business. Thank you for all your answers. You seem to have got a good clarity with regard to that. Can you repeat barter and exchange? It's very clear. See, barter is if you have one product or service, you are giving that and taking another service of the same value. There is no monetary consideration apart from this. That is your barter. Fine. And exchange. What is exchange? The intention to provide one service for another service is not there in exchange. It is coming as incidental to the main transaction. Like the example of your selling of the old car and getting a new car in return. Down payment amount can be considered in exchange. No, down payment is something different. Yeah, of course. If there is a non-monetary consideration, like you are giving the old car and you are giving the down payment, fine, then it is an exchange. Sometimes what happens, just 1 second. Yeah, sorry about that. The BOS person who was logged in called me back, so I had to tell her that I called her to mute herself. Anyways, now I hope there is no disturbance. Yeah. So now, so that was your barter and exchange, and coming back to our examples. Now, sale of pen by stationery shop to a consumer, example of a sale. Transfer of goods from factory to depot by company, example of transfer. The new car of 5 lakhs, exchange of old car and money. This is your exchange. CA providing GST consultancy to landlord, thereby not paying rent for 1 month, is your barter. Fine. I hope you got the clarity. Yeah, there was some other query. Yeah, that's about it. Yeah. So let us look at the various aspects. Significance of the term consideration. Consideration can be in money or it can be in kind also. See, the term consideration doesn't refer always to money. It can be in kind also. If you're giving something in return, non-monetary benefit, that also is a consideration. Then there is an interesting situation where a charitable institution is there. Okay. A charitable institution we will cover in exemptions chapter, when it is exempt and when it is not. Now, a charitable, let me ask you this question. A charitable institution receives a donation, receives the donation without quid pro quo. What is quid pro quo? Something in return. Something in return. So you want to build a school. You want to build a school. So one of the donors came and said that please build a class. I will give you say 1 lakh rupees. With this money, please build a classroom. Okay. Is it a supply or not? What is your view? Is it a supply or not? Is it a supply or not? I hope you got my example. So down payment, yeah, I'm coming to your doubt, Manisha. Don't worry, I won't leave that doubt. So yeah, so anyone here? I hope you understood the logic. One person came and donated 1 lakh towards construction of the classroom, whether it is a supply or not. Not in the course of business. Okay. Most important thing here is there is no supply because he just gives the money. There is no consideration which flows to him. So simply if one person comes and gives 1 lakh for construction of a classroom, then that is not a supply and there is no consideration. Now let me give you another example. One person, the same example, I'm just tweaking it a bit. I'm just modifying it a bit. One person contributed 1 lakh in memory of his grandfather who passed away. And outside the classroom, it is written, in loving memory of Mr. XYZ. Whether it is a supply. Whether it is a supply. I hope most of you got my second example, whether it is a supply. So second situation, it is just out of gratitude that the name is given. So if out of gratitude the name is mentioned, it does not imply the consideration. It does not imply the consideration. Now I go to the third example. The third example, a person is into the business of construction. He does the construction of the classroom free of cost. And outside the classroom, it is mentioned sponsored by XYZ Construction Private Limited. Sponsored by XYZ Construction Private Limited. What is, in this case, what is the situation? Third example. I hope you got my point clear. Okay. The third point. Okay. What is the point in the third one? Here it is very, very clear that even though you are not charging anything for the construction, you are doing an advertisement here. So therefore, it is a situation where the consideration is not non-monetary. You are providing the construction of classroom to the school. In turn, you are getting publicity. I hope you got the point. The persons who go to the classroom will see your company name and say, oh, this person has construction. So at least whoever sees knows that a construction company exists. So therefore, you are providing the construction service. The school is giving you the marketing and the branding service by showcasing your brand. So therefore, it is a consideration and there is supply. I hope you got these three examples with regard to this second point. So you have to know when it is a supply and when it is not a supply. Yeah, the doubt of down payment. Now, when we come here, to down payment, see, when you are exchanging your old car, if you give your old car straight away to the dealer and pay the money down payment, take a loan, etc., it is exchange. But in a situation where you are selling your old car somewhere else, you are getting the money That money you are using as down payment, that is not exchange. That is pure cash and carry. You are paying the money totally. I hope you got the point. So therefore, that is the difference. When exchange means that old car goes to the dealer only, and he will adjust that against whatever amount is due from you for the new car. Fine. That was so donations. I hope you got clarity on that. Artwork sent by artists to the galleries. Now, what does it mean? Now, M.F. Hussain sent a few paintings of his to an art gallery where his paintings were being auctioned to the respective people, whether it is a supply. So just because you are sending your paintings to the gallery for the purpose of auction, it doesn't mean there is a supply. Only when those paintings get sold does supply occur. So therefore, just you are sending to the gallery, no supply. Once the auction happens and someone purchases the painting, supply happens, then GST is triggered. Then, course or furtherance of business, Rishabh buys a car for his personal use. After a year, it sells it to the car dealer. Now, is it in the course or furtherance of the business? Is he purchasing the car for use or for selling it to someone? He is purchasing for his personal use. So it is not in course or furtherance of the business. So therefore, there is no supply here. Same way, M sold her gold bangles and earrings to age brothers. You have purchased bangles and earrings. At some difficult situation in your life, you have sold it. Is it in course or furtherance of the business? Definitely not. It is not in course or furtherance of the business. Therefore, no supply. Actor paints painting and sells them. Sale consideration is to be donated to an NGO. Any inputs on this? Actor paints painting and sells them. Whatever is for amount for which he has sold, he is donating it to an NGO. So whether this is a supply or not, kindly think and answer. Yeah. Any answers to this? See, when he sells the painting and makes the money, it doesn't matter where he donates it. Fine. Once he sells the painting and makes the money, it is very much a supply. So therefore, it is very much a supply here. No two ways about it. Resident Welfare Association provides the service of depositing electricity bills of the residents in lieu of nominal charges. RWA services which are provided are very much supply. As I told you, 71AA has been added. Whatever services are being provided, it is very much a supply. Admissions to circus, amusement parks, etc. also is a supply because it comes under business definition. Admission, if you are charging any consideration, it is a business activity. Facilitating betting transactions on horses placed through totalizator. The race club facilitates the betting transaction for a particular amount placed through the person who organizes the bets. That is also it is a very much a supply. Then taxability of cost petroleum. What is this? We will examine in the coming slides. Cost petroleum, there are two things associated to it. One for the cost of mining and getting the petrol, and apart from that, the share of profit with the government. The cost for which he is undertaking and getting reimbursed from the government is not a supply, but the profit share is a supply. We will see in the further slides, you'll get more clarity. Then financial transactions are totally excluded, but certain things like, say, if you don't maintain a minimum balance in your bank, he will charge some penal charges every month. On that, GST is applicable. But if you have a fixed deposit, you're getting interest on that GST will not be applicable. So financial transaction, it totally depends on the type of transactions. Major financial transactions like shares, securities, etc. are not chargeable to tax. Fine. So here, examples of the betting, the totalizator one. Royalty of Race Club is engaged in facilitating the betting transactions. Of providing, race club gets the commission, which is deducted and retained by the club from the total bet value. Fine, that is very much chargeable to tax. Now, cost petroleum, what does this? So how does it work? Now, the person who has the right to discover the oil, he will enter into a production sharing contract with the government. Once the contractor discovers the oil or gas, he will recover the contract cost involved. And after that, whatever profit comes because of the sale of petroleum will be shared with the government. The profit will be shared with the government. So the cost petroleum, that is for whatever cost he has spent for recovering the oil or gas, etc., that is not a consideration. That is not a consideration. It is just a reimbursement of cost from the government. That is clarified by way of a circular. Fine. So that was your cost petroleum. Then financial services provided by the banks. GST would be levied on service charges normally charged for the various transactions in money, including charges for making drafts, issuance charges for letter of credit, etc. All this GST will be applicable. Derivatives are neither goods nor services, therefore it is not liable to GST. Futures contracts purely speculative, that is not chargeable to GST. It is clearly excluded. Securities are clearly excluded. Therefore, these are not chargeable to GST at all. Commodity or currency trading. In this, if there is an actual delivery of commodity or currency, fine. In a futures or forward contract, they will fix a rate and you will actually procure that commodity or currency. Where there the GST is applicable. But if it is speculative and there is no delivery of the commodity or currency, then it is not chargeable to GST. If there is a net settlement which happens, there the GST is not applicable. Then lending of securities under the securities lending scheme. The lending fee charged from the borrowers and commission charged by the intermediaries is chargeable to GST. Now, what does this mean? If you have a security, you will keep that as a mortgage and you will lend that security to some other person. For this, lending fee is charged by the borrowers and the intermediary or broker who connects the lender and the borrower will take some commission. In this particular situation, the activities of the intermediaries or the brokers who facilitate this borrowing and lending of securities are taxed. Similarly, the lending fees, what is charged from the borrowers for this purpose, that also is taxed. Then transactions, sometimes interest rate swaps, foreign exchange swaps, some transactions will be there on speculative in nature where the instruments are derivatives, etc. They are excluded from the definition of supply itself. So this shall not be subject to GST. So that was your analysis on 7 subsection 1 clause A. Various case studies has been covered here. Any queries to know on 7.1a, please let me know. Derivative SFM chapter. Please refer to SFM subject. I don't know what it is called now. Group 1, Strategic Financial Management. You have a separate chapter on derivatives. It's one of the most complicated chapters for me. I don't know for the others, but it's very challenging to work out the problems. So SFM subject, derivative in short terms, it is a security. It is a security and trading of securities happen on the exchange. So it can be a futures contract or a forwards contract. Fine, this is what I know. I don't know much about more technical terms on this. So therefore it is covered in detail in your SFM subject. I hope that is clear. Yeah. Now we come to 7 subsection 1b, which speaks about importation of services for a consideration, whether or not in course or furtherance of the business. So therefore here, whether it should be in the course or furtherance of the business, that point is totally removed. So therefore, if you are importing any service for a consideration, it doesn't matter whether it is in course or furtherance of the business or not. Example, Ramaya proprietor has received architect services for his house from an architect located in New York at an agreed consideration of $5,000. So this import of service is supply under 7.1b. Though it is not in course or furtherance of the business, it is still still a supply because import is done. Importation of service by way of 7.1b is done at an agreed consideration of $5,000. Fine. This is, I hope this is clear. 7 subsection 1 clause B has one single term only, that is importation of services for consideration whether or not in the course or furtherance of business. Seven one C speaks about the supplies without consideration, which is clearly given in schedule number 1. So when I say supplies without consideration, it includes all supplies made by a taxable person to a taxable or non-taxable person, even if the same is without consideration. They are specifically mentioned in schedule 1 appended to the GST Act. So therefore 7.1 clause C, you have to read in accordance, in combination with your schedule number 1, which talks about the list of supplies which are present, which are to be treated as the supplies even though it is made without the consideration. They are specifically mentioned in schedule number 1. Let us look at each transaction here covered in schedule number 1, whereas which talks about the various transactions which are to be treated as supplies even though they are made without the consideration. Sir, if import of service is not for consideration, then if import of service is not for consideration, it has to come in your schedule 1, what we are going to discuss now. If it is not coming in schedule 1 here, in that particular situation, you cannot take that as the supply. So here, what does 7.1.2 say? 7.1, if you go back here, importation of consideration, whether or not in course or furtherance of the business. So if you are importing a service without consideration, definitely it is not a supply, unless and until it falls in schedule 1. Whether it falls in schedule 1, no, it is not covered in schedule 1. So I hope you got your answer. So consideration is a key component in 7 subsection 1 B. It is a clear consideration has compulsory. Course or furtherance of business is second. Okay. Any further queries? Sir, GST on petroleum once again. Very simple. If you are a person, you are undertaking a contract of mining, discovering petroleum from the government. You will incur the cost towards mining, cost towards the contractors, and cost towards procuring the oil or the gas. The moment you discover the oil or the gas, you will know what is the profit at which you will sell it to the dealers. The moment you arrive at the profit, you will sell that to the respective dealer. Along with the profit, you will sell it. And you have an agreement with the government. It's called Petroleum Sharing Contract, PSC, as to how much profit goes to the government and how much retains with you. So why am I discussing that here? There are two things too. One, the cost what you're spending that cost and you're recovering that cost from your respective government. The cost what you're recovering is not a supply, because you're spending, you're recovering that. But the profit is a supply. So cost petroleum, the cost of mining the petroleum is exempt from GST because it is not a supply, whereas the profit is very much chargeable to tax. I hope that is clear. Anju sir, I joined now. Can you explain the following? What I should explain, Anju, you have to tell me, because you have just put 2 dots. After that, I can't see anything. But I don't know if the time will permit. Anyways, you shoot your queries. Let me take it if the time permits. The first one in schedule number 1 is permanent transfer or disposal of business assets where ITC has been availed on such assets. What does this mean? You are procuring a business asset. Let us assume you are procuring a furniture. Okay, furniture, air conditioners you are procuring. You are using it in your office. You have claimed the input tax credit on that. What is input tax credit concept? Please refer to first class. Cascading effect, we have discussed what exactly is that. So you claim the respective input tax credit. You purchase a furniture for 1 lakh. GST 18% is 18,000. So 18,000 you claimed as an input tax credit. This furniture, after 5 years, you are disposing. If you are disposing without consideration, company is there. Company said, this director has, this employee has worked a lot. Let us give it free of cost to the employee. He will take it home and use it. So what you are doing, you are disposing the asset without consideration and you have taken the ITC on that. That is the condition. Okay, you have taken the ITC on that. Assets have to be transferred to the other person. Correct. No intention of getting back the assets after the transfer. Just because you gave that chair to the employee, tomorrow you should not call him and ask back that chair. So that intention should not be there. Third one, business asset which is transferred without consideration and no ITC was availed. That is not a supply. What is this situation? Input tax credit chapter will be handled separately. I'm only going to take that chapter. Somewhere in 24th or 25th is the classes for that. In input tax credit, there are some credits which are blocked. When I say it is blocked, you cannot claim the input tax credit on that assets. Example is motor car. You purchase a motor car, the GST what you pay on that motor car, you cannot claim as input tax credit. So if you purchase a motor car, you anyways would not have claimed the input tax credit. So after 5 years, you're giving the motor car free of cost to your employee or anyone else. Still, it is not a supply. Why it is not a supply? Because you have not taken the input tax credit. So the critical condition here in this particular point is the permanent transfer or business or disposal of business assets without consideration, where the ITC has been availed. Only that is a supply. Otherwise, it is not a supply. I hope it is clear. Examples: car purchased by company, transferred to director after 4 years free of cost. As I told you, car you cannot claim the input tax credit. So therefore, you didn't claim the input tax credit. You transferred to director free of cost. Not a supply. Second one, Dhruv gives old laptops being used in the business to his friend free of cost. This will qualify as supply. In case this Dhruv has taken the input tax credit on the procurement of laptops, then there will not be any. Then they will, if he has already taken the input tax credit, then in that particular situation, even though he is giving to his friend free of cost, then very much it is a supply without consideration. Even though there is no consideration, it is a supply. Fine. I hope you got the first point in schedule number 1. Will you explain business includes? Business includes, please refer to first session, Anju, you'll get clarity on that. How depart will know that asset is permanently transferred without consideration? I'll tell you, Namrata, department will not know anything. GST is a self-assessment tax. You have to be true to your conscience. Department can only issue a notice if they have some suspicion, or to artificial intelligence mechanisms got to know that you have done something wrong. They will send a notice and investigate further, and the issue will come to light. Otherwise, the department will not know anything. Sir, can you explain? Business includes service provided as a holder of office or course or furtherance. Example of activity. We have already covered all of this. I don't know if you heard the first class. Please hear the first class. Later, if you have any queries, please let me know. Then if if the asset are disposed or transferred from proprietary to partnership firm without consideration, ITC is availed. It is an interstate transfer. Is GST applicable? Okay, 1 second. Let me relook at this query. If assets are disposed or transferred from proprietary to partnership firm, proprietary to partnership firm is whether they are related or not. You didn't mention that. Without consideration, IT is levied. It is interstate transfer. GST is very much applicable. Very much applicable. There is no doubt about this. Fine. And a permanent transfer and availed ITC. Again, Amrita, here the same answer goes here also. The law is very clear. You have to follow the law. How the department will come to know means they have their own ways and means. Artificial intelligence, they may, they may track your through the GST portal your activities, what you have claimed input, and suddenly if it's there in your books of accounts, it is not there because there are multiple ways of tracking. So in that case, it will be pro. Otherwise, it is a self-assessment tax. You yourself have to be true and give the correct position. So therefore, now the second point which is there in schedule number 1 is supply of goods or services between related persons or distinct persons. So if you are a related person, it is clearly defined in GST. We will go through the definition. Explanation to section 15 defines the related person. So we will go through that now. Distinct person is what? In GST law, if you have a business in more than one state, you are supposed to obtain the GST registration in each state. And where there is a transaction between one state and other state of the same person, those two are to be treated as distinct persons. I hope you got the clarity. So therefore, what does it say here? Any supply of goods or services in the course or furtherance of the business by a taxable person to a related person, or by a taxable person to another taxable person as provided in section 25 of the Act, which is nothing but distinct person. 25 registration it refers to. When made without consideration, would qualify as supply. So related persons are making the transactions between each other. Distinct persons are making the transactions between each other without consideration will still qualify as supply. Then gifts not exceeding 50,000 in value in a financial year by an employer to the employee shall not be treated as supply of goods or services or both. Why is this covered here? Suddenly employer-employee, where it came? Because the word related person, it also covers employer and employee. So if you're an employer-employee for the purpose of GST, you are relevant. So therefore, that is what is covered here. Sometimes apart from the salary given to the employee totally exempt by virtue of Schedule 3. We will see that now. Schedule 3 totally exempts that. Apart from salary, if you are giving a gift more than 50,000 in 1 year to the employee, chargeable to tax. It is a supply. It is a supply. You are giving a gift to more than not exceed more than 50,000. It is chargeable to tax. Provided gifts not exceeding 50,000 shall not be treated as a supply of goods or services. Up to 50,000, no GST. More than 50,000 are given to the employee, on that GST will be applicable. Related person is defined as explanation to section 15. We'll see that shortly. Now, there is a clarification given. Again, this is also very important from exam point of view. Please note down, very important from exam point of view. You can expect a question on this. Yeah, one more. In case we have taken ITC on machinery on first 2 years, okay. After second year, we have reversed the credit and sold the machinery after reversal of credit. So whether it is considered that ICC has taken and whether it is partly covered. But why will you reverse the credit? You have sold the machinery after reversal of ITC. I didn't get the point. See, you have taken input tax credit, but why have you reversed the credit? There is no reason for you to reverse the credit unless it is a blocked credit. So that means if you have reversed the credit, of course, it will not come under the Schedule 1. Of course, it is not, because it will be treated as if ITC is not taken off. But if you have claimed the ITC, until and unless it is a blocked credit or ineligible credit, you will not reverse it. There's no question of reverse. But in case you have reversed it, definitely it will be as if you have not taken any input tax. Because if you reverse the input tax credit also, you have to pay. So it is as good as charging that amount from the respective customer to whom you are selling the respective machine. Yeah. Now this is important from exam point of view. A clarification is given with regard to perquisites given to employees. Now what happens? Apart from the salary in the job agreement, there are some perquisites given to the employees. Like what? If a high-level employee is there, they give him a car for transport. Okay, they give him a car for transport, or they give him accommodation. So that is in the nature of perquisite. So the question came whether this perquisite is to be treated, if this perquisite value is more than 50,000, whether it will come under Schedule 1. But a clarification was given very clearly, saying that in case it is a perquisite by way of a contractual agreement between the employer and the employee, it will fall under Schedule 3, which says neither a supply of goods nor a supply of services. It will fall clearly under Schedule 3, which says exempt. So therefore, perquisites is there as due to the contractual agreement. If any perquisites are being provided by the employer to the employees, that will not be covered in Schedule 1. Okay, this clarification was given. So related persons who all are there, please go through all of this. Officers of, it's a very, very huge definition. Huge as in not for the purpose of reading, but it covers a variety of people. All related persons, it covers variety of people here. Officers or directors of another's business, legally recognized partners in business, employer and employee. Third person directly or indirectly controls or holds 25% of share or voting power in these two. Then these two are also related. One of them directly or indirectly controls the other. Again, they are related. Both of them are directly or indirectly controlled by a third person. Then these both are related. Together, they directly or indirectly control a third person. Then these two are related. members of the same family. Okay, members of the same family, we saw the definition here. It includes spouse and children, and the others, if you are there, if they are dependent only, they will come under the family. Sole agent or distributor. Sole agent or distributor means the person who is authorized to sell the goods on behalf of the principal. The person who is authorized to sell the goods on behalf of the principal, and he also issues an invoice on behalf of the principal. That is also covered here under related person. That is sole agent or distributor. Sir, in relation to query for reversal of credit, in case the machinery was earlier used for supply of taxable goods, but afterwards such taxable goods get exempted under GST. Yes, very clear. So in that case, you are reversing the credit. That means, and later you are selling that machinery, which is anyways exempt. There is no question of charging any tax, because you have already reversed the credit. Yeah. So therefore, GST registration, what is this distinct person? As I told you, under the GST law, if a business is there in each state, he has to take a separate state-wise registration. He has to obtain the registration in every state or union territory from where he makes the taxable supply, provided his aggregate turnover exceeds a specified threshold limit. You will see all this in registration chapter. Thus, he is not required to obtain registration from a state where he makes non-taxable supply. So he has to get registration in another state in case he makes the taxable supply in that state. In case he doesn't make the taxable supply, if he makes non-taxable supply, there is not required to get registered. So distinct person, as I told you, 25 subsection 5 speaks about the same, where any person who has obtained or is required to obtain registration in any state or union territory, in respect of establishment, he has another establishment. Those both are to be treated as establishments of distinct persons for the purpose of GST. This is the family definition, as I told you. Spouse and children is already always covered, but parents, grandparents, brother, sister will be covered only if they are wholly or mainly dependent on the said person. Some examples for distinct person. Mr. M is a chartered accountant. He has an office in Hyderabad and an office in Delhi. Both the cases he has to get the registration. Each office shall be treated as a distinct GST applicable. Diwali gift worth 60,000 given to the employee. As I told you, up to 50,000, it is not considered, not covered, not a supply. But if it is more than 50,000 given to the employee, then this also is comes under Schedule 1 and chargeable to tax. Rishabh Enterprises registered supplier owns AC restaurant in Virar, Maharashtra. It opened a liquor shop in Raipur, Uttarakhand for trading of alcoholic liquor for human consumption. So here what happens? The one in Virar, Maharashtra is registered, required to be registered under GST. But Raipur, Uttarakhand is not registered because he is engaged in non-taxable supply. So that will be an unregistered entity. But however, the transactions between the two, here from registered person to unregistered person will be there. So you cannot show them as a distinct person because the second place is not registered. Fine. Any queries here? Yeah. Stock transfer, as I told you, one branch always supplies the service to the other branch without consideration. Goods are also transferred free of cost. Distribution of samples manufactured in fact to different branches, transfer of goods, etc., where the demand is higher. So where these transactions are undertaken, even though without consideration, they will qualify as supply, provided the transfer of goods is between different locations of the same entity as their transaction between distinct persons or establishment of distinct persons. Some examples here. Raghuveer Fabrics 1,000 shirts they transfer from factory located in Lucknow to retail showroom in Delhi so that the same can be sold from there. Stock transfer, even though it is owned by the same person, transfer from one place to the other, it is a supply without consideration. Here, 1,000 shirts are transferred from factory in Lucknow to retail showroom in Kanpur so that it can be sold from there. Here what is happening within the state, only stock transfer is happening. In this case, there is only single registration, so therefore there is no supply. Only if multiple registrations are there, then the supply will be attracted. Then molds and dies owned by OEM, that is original equipment manufacturers. Sometimes the OEMs gives the contract to a component manufacturer to manufacture the components. So here the molds and dies are sent free of cost to the component manufacturer in course or furtherance of the business. They are also is not supplied because they are not related person or distinct persons and there is no consideration involved. Then as I told you, between employer and employee, you'll have to see employer and employee are related persons, but the services provided by employee to employer in the course of employment are not to be treated as supply. So only gifts up to 50,000 in value in one financial year shall not be treated as supply of goods or services. Gifts of value of more than 50,000 without consideration are supply and subject to GST when made in the course or furtherance of the business. Also, a clarification has been given that services such as membership of club, health and fitness center are provided free of charge to the employees. The same shall not be subject to GST. Sometimes in Google, especially, they give a lot of such benefits to the employees. So such services are given to the employees free of charge. It will not come under the GST. It will not come under the supply without the consideration. Clarification was given. Then your agent is covered. Supply of goods by principal to his agent, where agent undertakes to supply such goods on behalf of the principal. That is point number 1. And the second situation, supply of goods by agent to the principal, where agent undertakes to receive such goods on behalf of the principal. So this principal agent transactions will be covered only when it will be covered, where the agent has a contract of undertaking the supply of goods on behalf of the principal and undertaking of receiving such goods on behalf of the principal. Where he has the contract, only that shall be considered. Here again an important point, please make a note, services are not covered, only goods are covered in the principal agent transaction. Example here is a manufacturer of cars has appointed B to be his agent and sell the cars on his behalf. A has supplied 20 cars to B without consideration. Here it is very simple. The supply principal agent transactions, supply of goods, even though there is no consideration, it is to be taken as a supply. Why? Because he is a sole agent and undertaking to supply the goods on behalf of the principal. Then as discussed here, some points here, services are not covered, only the goods are covered in the principal agent transactions. In order to determine where the particular transaction is to be covered, principal agent, whether the deciding factor is who is issuing the invoice on behalf of the principal. That is the most important point. If the invoice is for further supplies issued by the agent in his name, then any provision of goods from the principal to the agent will be covered. If invoice is issued by agent to customer in the name of the principal, then such agent will not be covered, right? So therefore, important point, criteria to determine whether the principal agent is coming or not. Again, just relook at it again. Invoice for further supply is being issued by the agent in his name, then it is covered. If agent is issuing invoice on the name of the principal, then such agent will not be covered. So where the goods being procured on behalf of the principal are invoiced in the name of the agent, then the further provision of such goods by the agent to the principal will be covered. Examples, Anmol appoints Bolu to procure certain goods from the market. Bolu identifies various suppliers who can provide the goods as desired by Anmol and asks the supplier Bolu to send the goods and issue the invoice directly to Anmol. So here what is happening? Bolu is being appointed, but invoice is telling issue directly to Anmol. So therefore he is not issuing the invoice on the name of the on his name. Invoice is being issued by the principal directly. So therefore, in that particular situation, this is not covered here. Second point, banking company Tintin appoints Mandar auctioneer to auction certain goods. Auctioneer arranges for the auction and identifies the potential bidders. The highest bid is accepted and the goods are sold to the highest bidder by Tintin. Invoice for the supply of the goods is issued again by Tintin. Now, this is a mere auctioneer services. It is not an agent service. Auctioneer is not issuing the invoice on his name. Tintin only is issuing the invoice on his name. So therefore, this is not a considered transaction covered under Schedule 1. Gautam and artist appoints Gambhir auction to auction the painting. Gambhir arranges for the auction, identifies the potential bidder. The highest bid is accepted and painting is sold. Invoice issued by the Gambhir on behalf of the Gautam. So here what is happening, if you see, though he is an auctioneer and is auctions the painting, the invoice is issued by the agent on behalf of the principal. So since that is happening, this supply even without consideration will come under Schedule number 1. Then whether del creditor agent is covered. Who is del creditor agent? Where the agent guarantees the payment to the supplier. The main difference between del creditor agent and other agent is the DCA guarantees the payment to the supplier. Sometimes the DCA also gives a short-term loan to the buyer in order to make the payment to the supplier. Temporary short-term transaction based loan also is given. So whether such service and interest charge is to be included in the value of the supply totally depends on whether the DCA is covered in Schedule 1 or not. Key point is, if DCA issues invoice on his name, then he is an agent. Very simple. Invoice should be on the agent's name. Only then he'll be an agent. Then the next one, import of services by a taxable person from a related person or from any of his establishments in the course or furtherance of the business. So here what is happening, a services get imported from a related person or from any of the establishments in India in the course of service of the business. So this also without consideration it comes here. Here from other establishment also is there, in the course or furtherance it happens. So importation does not include importation without consideration. These are all to be considered where services are received from related persons or establishments outside India. So example, Jumru Associates received legal consultancy from its head office. Head office has rendered such services free of cost. So here importation of services without consideration is happening. That is not what is covered here. Here, import of services in the course or furtherance of the business is covered. That without consideration is there here. Fine. So importation, therefore this clause, all the services from related person. So here Jumru is getting legal consultancy services from the head office. So without consideration, a taxable person is getting the services from the related person. Fine. But it should be in the course or furtherance of the business. So here if Jumru Associates is in the same business, if the legal consultancy is for the business point of view, then it is a supply. Otherwise, it is not a supply. Further examples. Sumedha, a proprietor registered in Delhi, has sought architect services from his father located in US with respect to newly constructed house in Delhi. Services were received without consideration. Please explain whether this is a supply as per Schedule 1. Would your answer be different if the services were procured for the purpose of the new office? Important point you have to see here is whether this import of services is without consideration. Definitely it is without consideration. So once it is without consideration, whether it is in course or furtherance of the business. In the first situation, it is for the house purpose. So therefore, it is not in course or furtherance of the business. In that particular situation, definitely it is not a supply. But second situation, it is for purpose of the new office. So importing service without consideration in the course or furtherance of the business is covered under Schedule number 1. Then some clarifications on sales promotion schemes. Free samples and gifts is not a supply until and unless it falls under Schedule 1. So if you are giving free samples and gifts to outsiders, it is not a supply. But if you are giving it to related person or distinct person, then it is a supply because it comes under Schedule 1. Buy one, get one free offers. Again, technically, it is not a supply because you are getting two products for the cost of one ultimately. So it has to be treated as mixed or composite supply as per section 8. We will see what is the concept of mixed or composite supply also today. Fine. So with this, we come to the end of schedule number 1, which talks about the multiple services. That is 7, 1A, B, C are covered here. And then let's take a break of 5 to 10 minutes, and then we'll come back where we see 7, 1A along with schedule 2 and also schedule 3. Any further queries till now? Sir, can you explain circular 7, page 2.39? Page 2.39 is for the study material. I will explain it. Let's go through the circular and I will take up this particular query. Fine. So let's have a break of 10 minutes. I'll come back and then we'll continue the discussion. Okay. Welcome back, everyone. So I hope now you're in the middle of section 7 and you're able to follow what we are discussing. So now we come to 7 subsection 1 block A, which speaks about the activities which are to be treated as supply of goods or supply of services. As I told you, there was a lot of controversy prior to GST, whether it was for goods or whether it is for services. So to end that controversy, this particular section along with schedule 2 has been given in the GST law, which clearly says that the following transactions are supposed to be treated only as supply of goods or only as supply of services. So whether it is supply of goods or whether it is supply of services, the subsection clearly provides for the same. Schedule 2 gives the entire list. Mainly all the points which are given in the schedule 2 are those which are stuck in litigation in the earlier regime due to their complex nature and susceptibility to the double taxation. Fine. So that is the main thing. So what are the details given in schedule 2? First one is transfer of title in goods. If any transfer of title in goods are there, like sale of ready-made garments, it is a supply of goods. Second one, transfer of right in goods or undivided share in goods without the transfer of title. So if you have some product, you don't transfer the title or ownership, but you only transfer the right to use the goods, like you're renting out some machinery, then that is to be treated as a service. Then transfer of title in goods where the property will pass on at a future date upon payment of full consideration, which is nothing but a hire purchase contract. So initially you take the goods, but after certain period, the property will pass on once the full consideration is paid. That is to be treated as supply of goods. Then land and building related, lease, tenancy, easement, license to occupy the land. All these to be treated as service. Any sort of lease, tenancy, easement to occupy the land, it is service. Then lease or letting out of the building, including a commercial, industrial or residential complex for business or commerce, either wholly or partly. This is also to be treated as the service. Fine. So lease or letting out of the building, including commercial, industrial and residential complex. This is to be treated as the service. Then if you are doing a treatment or process, that is the job work, this also is a service. Transfer of business assets, as I told you, if you are transferring or disposing the goods forming part of the business so that they no longer form part of the business assets, whether or not for a consideration. So this is to be treated as supply of goods. So if you have any business goods which no longer is a part of the business and you're transferring the goods in that particular situation, whether or not for a consideration, it doesn't matter. But again, this is subject to schedule 1. If it is not for consideration, refer to schedule 1. This is always subject to schedule 1 because schedule 1 covers the things which says no consideration. Then this is supply of goods. Then goods are put to any private use on the direction of the person carrying on the business, or are used or made available to any person for use for any purpose other than the purpose of business, whether or not for a consideration. So here what is happening? There is a particular goods. You are giving it to a particular other person for his private use. Okay. For any purpose other than purpose of business, whether or not for a consideration. So here the director is using the company car for travel, example. So this is a service. The goods are put to the private use. So therefore, this is to be treated as the service. Then, if any person ceases to be a taxable person, that is, he closes down his business or any other reason whatsoever, then the goods which are forming part of the assets shall be deemed to be the supply immediately before he ceases, except if he is transferring the business as a going concern or business is carried on by personal representative who is deemed to be a taxable person. That means what? If a business is stopped, until and unless these two activities are not done, whatever are goods lying in the part of the business, they shall be deemed as if it is transfer. That is supply of goods. Fine. Unless if you are transferring the business to someone else to take it up as a going concern, then this particular point will not apply. And second, business is carried on by the personal representative. So the example is, if you are closing the business and the goods are lying in the stock itself. You are closing the business and the goods are lying in the stock itself. They are to be treated as deemed supply if these two activities don't occur. Renting of immovable property to be treated as the service. There is no, it is crystal clear, this point. There is total clarity. If you are renting any immovable property, it is to be treated as service. Now we come to 5B of the Schedule 2, which is a very, very important and very, very interesting provision. So before we go here, let me see if you have any queries. Yeah, I think we are sorted now. So 5B, what does 5B say? It says construction of complex building, civil structure or part thereof, including a complex or building intended for sale to the buyer, wholly or partly, except where entire consideration has been received after issuance of completion certificate where required by the competent authority or before its first occupation, whichever is earlier. So therefore, what does this mean? There are two situations. You are entering into a construction contract. The moment you are entering into the construction contract, you have taken some amount from your respective customer, saying that once you give the amount, I will start the construction. So ground floor you are taking that amount, first floor you are taking that amount, like that. That is again supply of construction service, but it is there in Schedule 3, which says it is exempt. No, I'm sorry. If you are taking it at the time of the construction, it is taxable. That is covered under Schedule 2. So therefore, if the main key here is to understand when the consideration is received. If the consideration is received before or during the time of construction of the complex building or civil structure, then it is a supply of service. That's why here it is written, except where the entire consideration has been received. The word entire here is very, very important. That means you are constructing the entire premises. You have not taken the money from your customers. You have completed the construction. After you complete the construction, what you are doing? You are taking the money from the customer. After completion of construction, you are taking the money from the customer. That is exempt, which is given under Schedule 3, which we will shortly see. I hope this point is clear. So what does construction include? That also is clarified here. Additions, alterations, replacement or remodeling of any existing civil structure. So what is an example of 5B of Schedule 2? If you are, this example every day you can see. If you are going and passing through a newly developed area in your city, you will see flats for sale, but there won't be any flats. It is still under construction. So how do those models work? They will take advance from you. They will give you a construction schedule and take the amounts from you as and when a milestone is achieved. That is your Schedule 5. Subject to GST supply of service. For ready-made flat is there. It says flat for sale. That comes under Schedule 3, exempt, and it is not a supply of service. It's neither a supply of goods nor a supply of service. Fine. So that was your 5B. And any queries till now? Yeah, I think we're fine. 5C, temporary transfer or permitting the use or enjoyment of any intellectual property right. So you are transferring temporarily or you are permitting the use or enjoyment of any intellectual property right. That is a service. Development, design, programming, customization, adaptation, upgradation, enhancement, implementation of IT software. This also is a service. Supply of GST software to the client's example for smooth processing of returns. It is a service. Agreeing to the obligation to refrain from an act or to tolerate an act or situation or to do an act. payment of liquidated damages under a contract for non-performance or short performance of an obligation under the contract. There are some clarifications with regard to liquidated damages, which are recent. It falls under your recent amendments. We shall cover that. So 5E as of now, just read it. It says that if you are agreeing to obligation to refrain or to tolerate an act or situation, then it is your supply of service. But there is a small amendment to this 5E, which we shall cover soon. Then transfer of the right to use any goods for any purpose, whether or not for a specified period, for cash, deferred payment, or other valuable consideration. So if you are using the goods, if you are transferring the right to use the goods without transferring the goods, then in that particular situation, it is a supply of service for cash, deferred payment, or valuable consideration. Then further important activities in Schedule 2. There are few composite supplies, which includes both the goods and the services, which shall be treated as supply of services by way of Schedule 2. The first one is a works contract. If any works contract as per 219 is there, it shall be treated as supply of service, very clearly given. Though it may include goods like steel, cement, etc., by virtue of the Schedule 2, you have to treat it as supply of service. Works contract definition is also given. It's pretty self-explanatory. All these activities are covered. Next point, supply by way or part of any service in any manner, goods being food of any article for human consumption or any drink other than alcoholic liquor. Why alcoholic liquor not covered? Please refer to first session of GST, right? So example here is restaurant services or catering services. This serial number 7 only is not relevant as of now, because the serial number 7 has now been removed and 7 subsection 1 clause AA is there. So this serial number 7 is no longer relevant because it has been deleted. I purposely put it in the slide so that you know it is not relevant. So what I will do is I will just select this and put a slash here so that you know that it was there before, but now it is not there. Then few clarifications with regard to schedule number 2. First is your tenancy rights, which are there. The tenancy rights, what do you mean by tenancy rights? If a person is a tenant or is using a rented premises for a long time, he also gets a tenancy rights. That means if he has to vacate and a new tenant has to come, he will have to be paid for his tenancy rights because he has been occupying the premises for a long time. So if he has to vacate the premises, he has to be paid some amount as tenancy premium. So this tenancy premium will be paid by the new tenant who is activating or by the landlord, depending on the case may be. So it is known as tenancy premium. This tenancy premium is also covered under supply of service, which is liable to GST. That is one important clarification which has been given. Then the second clarification is priority sector lending certificates. What does this priority sector lending certificates means? They are basically freely tradable duty scrips. Freely tradable duty scrips. What is this? It is a lending certificate wherein you get some export incentives or some benefits with regard to duty drawbacks, etc. It is something like a security, but the clarification is given. It appears to be a security, but later it was clearly given that it is not a security. That is the clarification which is given. So this can be freely transferred from one person to the other. So it's a freely tradable duty scrip, and therefore this is very much subject to GST as a supply of goods. So PSLC, priority sector lending certificates, subject to GST as supply of goods. Then joint venture. What is a joint venture? If more than 2 or more persons join together for a particular project, it is a joint venture. So an amount which is contributed by each person to the venture is not in the nature of supply. Amount given by each person to the venture is not in the nature of supply. That clarification also is given. Fine. So that was your schedule 2. Any queries in schedule 2? It's a very, very important point. You have to remember all of this carefully. Yes, in case 50% is received before completion, rest 50% after completion, GST will be applicable on 100% consideration, on 50% consideration. Very, very interesting doubt. This doubt is asked by all practically also. GST, the moment you start receiving any consideration before completion certificate, the entire thing is taxable. That is why the word entire is given in that. That is why the word entire is, that is why I told you when we discussed also, the word entire here is very, very crucial. Entire consideration is received only, then the exemption can be claimed. Otherwise, it is not an exemption. 50% before means on that also GST will come. 50% after completion, on that also GST will come. I hope your query is resolved. Now we come to Schedule 3, which is nothing but a negative list in GST. What is this word negative list? Earlier, when service tax started, it started with 3 or 4 services which are chargeable to tax. That 3 services became 116 services. Then rather than 116 or 120 services, what the government thought is, I will tell the services which are exempt, because pretty much everything is subject to tax, and said that these are all exempt services. So this negative list was there in GST service tax. From there, the points are taken in the GST law. All those are covered in the negative list in service tax are now covered in Schedule 3 of the GST law. First one, we have already discussed this. Services by employee to employer in the course or in relation to the employment. Totally exempt, not a supply of service, not a supply of goods. Services by court or tribunal established under any law for the time being in force. Very self-explanatory here. Here what happens, if any court is providing a function, any tribunal is providing a function, it is also not a supply of goods, not a supply of service. Consumer Redressal Forum charges a particular commission whenever the complaints are filed in that. That also is not a supply. It is regarded as a court or tribunal. Then functions performed by these MPs, MLAs, etc., local authorities, municipalities, etc., not a supply of goods, not a supply of service. Duties performed by any person who holds any post in that capacity. Chairperson member in a body, PSUs, public sector undertakings are there where many people are the chairmen or the chairpersons. That also is exempt. Then services of funeral, burial, crematorium or mortuary, including transportation of the deceased, exempt. Sale of land and subject to clause B5, sale of building. I hope this point you understand. The Schedule 3 which is given, sale of land to totally exempt. But sale of building subject to that. That is sale of building if entire consideration is received after completion certificate or first occupation, whichever is earlier. So if it is received after that, that also is exempt. Actionable claims other than lottery, betting, gambling. This also exempt. We saw the definition of actionable claims in the first session. Lottery, betting and gambling are chargeable to tax. Other than that, all the other actionable claims are exempt. Out and out supplies, merchant trading. That is, if one goods in non-taxable territory is going to another place in non-taxable territory and those goods are not entered into Indian shores. That is, it is there. If the ship stops in Indian shores, but if it doesn't come inside the Indian territory, it is fine. From there itself, it goes. That is why out and out supplies. Both all the supplies from origin and destination are outside India. So therefore, that is also neither a supply of goods, not a supply of service. Then these are all recent additions. 7, 8 are recent additions here. Then supply of warehoused goods to any person before clearance for home consumption. The products are not cleared for home consumption and it is came from outside the country. It is there in the warehouse. It is supplied to some other person before clearance for home consumption. Not a supply of goods, not a supply of service. Supply of goods by consignee to any other person by endorsement of documents of title to the goods after the goods have been dispatched from port of origin located outside India, but before clearance for home consumption. So therefore, consignee is there. He supplies the goods to any other person. In the document, he writes that he has sold it to the other person. Goods have been dispatched, but it is not yet cleared for home consumption. That also is there. Example, if you see, Prasoon of India imported some goods from Japan. While goods were in high seas, that is outside on the ship, Prasoon sold the goods to Jinesh in India by way of endorsement of title. Through the document, he said, I'm selling these goods to you. So the transaction is neither supply of goods, not a supply of services. Why? Because before it was cleared for home consumption, that is when the ownership passed off. So therefore, that is covered here. Then activities or transactions undertaken by central government, state government, local authority, where they are engaged as public authority. So all your public functions, electricity, municipality, all your various roads, etc., all that is exempt from GST, right? So activities in relation to some more clarifications, activities relating to panchayats or municipal functions, clearly it is not supply of good nor a supply of service. Alcoholic liquor for human consumption is not covered at all. But same way, the issue came with regard to grant of alcoholic liquor license. So if I say grant of alcoholic liquor license, this also is clearly given as an exemption, not a supply of good, not a supply of service. Very, very clearly given. Interstate movement of various modes of conveyance, trains, buses, tractors, vessels, etc., except when it is for further supply. That means interstate movement of various modes. So the process, the trains are being moved from one place to the other. Buses are being moved from one place to the other. But movement is for further supply. Okay. Except when the movement is for further supply, then it is a supply. Otherwise, it is not a supply. Similarly, movement of rigs, tools, spares, and all goods on wheels, etc., when it is for further supply, that also is covered here as a non-supply. Fine. So with that, we come to the end of schedule 1, 2, 3, along with section 7. These are very, very important section from the examination point of view. I request all of you to dedicate quite a lot of time in understanding these provisions, and please feel free to check with me in case of any queries whatsoever. So now we move on to the next concept, that is composite and mixed supply. Composite and mixed supply. So there may be a situation where the products which are being sold sometimes are sold with other products. Examples, if you are selling a laptop, you sell the laptop along with a laptop bag. If you are selling an air conditioner, you sell it along with the installation service of the air conditioner. You obviously can't take the air conditioner and install it by yourself. So installation service also is provided along with the sale of the air conditioner. So this also is a point. So in such situations, how is the tax liability worked out? How is the tax which is required to be calculated is given under section 8. So therefore, the tax liability of composite or the mixed supply shall be determined in the following manner. First one, a composite supply comprising two or more supplies, one of which is a principal supply, shall be treated as a supply of such principal supply. So therefore, a composite supply is in there, two or more supplies are there, out of which one is principal supply, one is auxiliary supply. It shall be treated as if it is a supply of such principal supply. What is principal supply? Principal supply is the main product. Example, laptop you are selling. Along with laptop, you are giving laptop back. The rate which is applicable to the laptop only should be charged for the laptop bag also. Why? Because in this case, the principal supply is the laptop and not the laptop bag. Same way, second situation is a mixed supply. That is, you don't know, you cannot identify which is a principal supply and which is a auxiliary or incidental supply. Example, gift packet. Diwali gift packet is sold. It has some chocolates, it has some dry fruits, it has some cool drinks or whatnot. Multiple things are there in one gift hamper. The price of the gift hamper is 5,000 rupees. So on this, what rate is to be applicable? All these are principal supplies in themselves. You cannot say this is incidental and that is principal. So in that particular situation, it is a mixed supply. And the rate which is applicable to the highest that has to be taken for the computing the tax liability. So the particular supply which attracts the highest rate of tax needs to be taken for the mixed supply. So therefore, 2 subsection 30 of the CGST Act defines the term composite supply. It means a supply made by a taxable person to a recipient. The important criteria is it should consist of 2 or more taxable supplies of goods or services, 2 or more supplies of goods or services or both or any combination thereof, which are naturally bundled. This word is very, very important. Please write down. Composite supply means it should be naturally bundled. The moment it is naturally bundled and supplied in conjunction with each other in the ordinary course of the business, then you know, and out of that, one is a principal supply. So out of these two, one should be a principal supply. In that particular situation, it is becomes a composite supply. Then, as I told you here, if it involves more than one goods or services which are naturally bundled, it is a composite supply, deemed to be a supply of the goods which constitutes the principal supply. Examples here: goods are packed, transported with insurance. The supply of goods packing materials is a composite supply. Supply of goods is a principal supply. So therefore, entire thing will be taxed wholly as supply of goods. Some more examples: travel ticket from Mumbai to Delhi may include service of food being served on board, also free insurance and use of airport lounge. In this case, transport of passenger constitutes the main predominant element and will be treated as a principal supply, with all others auxiliary. Then contract is entered with regard to supply of certain goods, erection, installation of the same, supply of certain goods along with the installation, etc. All these are naturally bundled, would therefore qualify as the composite supply. Therefore, it should be qualifying as a supply of the goods therein, which are essentially the principal supply. The value attributable to the erection and installation will also be taxable, as if they are also the supply of the main goods. So what are the key factors which decide in determining whether the services are bundled in the ordinary course or not? What are the main things which help you identify whether it is naturally bundled or whether it is not naturally bundled? First thing is perception of the consumer or the service receiver. How does the consumer look at a particular product? If he looks at purchasing a laptop, his main intention is to purchase the laptop only. The bag automatically comes with it. Then, majority of service providers in the area of business provide similar bundle of services. So whoever is the laptop seller, even the competitors in the market who have other stores, they also sell laptops with bag only. Majority do that only. So therefore, definitely laptop is the principal supply. The nature of service. Nature of service. What do you mean by nature of service here? What is the type of service which is being provided? Has to be taken into consideration. Then other illustrative indicators like advertisement as a package, elements not available separately are considered here. So that is basically your composite supply. What is your mixed supply? The mixed supply here is basically, again, this also involves two or more individual supply of goods or combination for a single price where the supply does not constitute a composite supply. Sir, serial number 9 of schedule 3 is not mentioned in the study material. What is serial number 9? Let me just check what is that. Yeah, this is the residuary provision. It has come here in schedule 3, but it is a residuary provision. If you look at here, 7 subsection 3 covers that. 7 subsection 3, let me go there once so that you get the clarity where it appears. 7 subsection 3, this is the one. So therefore, this is covered here, but it was there. It is there in schedule 3 as well. I don't know, for some reason it has been missed out. It continues to remain in schedule 3. Yeah, so now let us, where were we? We have to go back to the composite mixed supply here. Yeah, correct. Any further queries till now in section 7? Please feel free to ask me. 274 of the CGST Act defines mixed supply. Mixed supply again is two or more individual supplies of goods or services or combination thereof made in conjunction with each other by a taxable person for a single price where such supply does not constitute a composite supply. So two or more supplies of goods or services, but it is not a composite supply. When it is not a composite supply, it is not naturally bundled together. If it involves supply of more than one goods or services which are not bundled together, they are referred to as mixed supply of goods or services. It shall be deemed to be a supply of that goods or services, therein liable to tax at the highest rate of GST. Fine. So when will it be taken as a mixed supply? when goods or services are sold for a single price, they are not naturally bundled, and it does not qualify as a composite supply. In these three situations, it will be recommended as a mixed supply. Examples here: supply of package consisting of canned foods, sweets, chocolates, cakes, dry fruits, aerated drink, fruit juices, when supplied for a single price, is known as a mixed supply. Each of these can be supplied separately and not dependent on each other. It shall not be a mixed supply if they are supplied separately. Therefore, taxed wholly a supply of those goods which are subject to the highest rate of GST. Guiding principles for determination are all of these. Naturally bundled means composite. Supplied together, again, composite mixed, both can be that. Can be supplied separately. No in composite and no yes in mixed supply. Other one is predominant supply for the recipient. It is there in composite supply, not there in mixed supply. Other supply is not aim in itself for the recipient. That means if a laptop is there, main is laptop, not the laptop bag. Each supply priced separately. All these are the guiding principles for determination for a composite supply or mixed supply. Some clarifications with regard to the mixed or supply, mixed or composite supply were given to the printing services. In case of printing services, there are two situations which are there. First time what happens, the content is given by the publisher or the person who owns the usage rights to the intangible inputs, and physical inputs, paper, etc. is given by the printer. So therefore, two types of clarifications are given. In case of books, pamphlets, brochures, annual reports, etc., where content only is given by the publisher or the person who owns the usage rights, physical inputs are given by the particular printer. That case, it is a supply of service. But second situation, there is no content as such here. It is just printed envelopes. Only basic company name is given. You print many envelopes, letterheads, printed box, tissues, napkins with the company branding, etc. There, the main principal commodity is the paper and not the content, because content is very small. It is not a proprietary content. It is just a small logo, etc. So there it will be supply of goods. So this clarification was given. You can expect a problem based on this one, though it is not a recent clarification. Maybe a couple of years back these clarifications were issued, so you can definitely expect queries based on this. Then next one, retreading of tires. When I say retreading of tires, that means old tires will be there. Old tires, they retread it and they repair it, and then you again make the tire usable. In that particular situation, the predominant element here is the retreading activity. But you use the rubber, but the rubber is an ancillary service. So therefore, here retreading of tires is to be taken as a supply of service, because even though there is a supply of rubber, that rubber supply is used only as an auxiliary service. Sometimes what happens? Old tires belong to the supplier of retreaded tires. There it is a supplier of goods. That means you go for purchasing a tire. That supplier who does the retreading has some old tire. He does the retreading on that and sells it. That is a supply of goods. So I hope this also is clear. So with this, we come to the end of chapter number 2. We are now left out with some questions and problems what we will work out, and also we will look at a few other important discussions if needs be. Sir, point 8 in schedule 3 is goods sold to presumed taxable. Let me go back to the respective slide. Yeah. Prasoon is importing the goods from Japan. Prasoon sold the goods to Jinesh in India by way of endorsement of documents of title. That means he, after the goods come here, doesn't, before it comes only, he is selling it off. That is not a supply of goods, not a supply of, nor a supply of service, because it is clearly given under the schedule 3. I hope that point is clear. Single price means, that means if you purchase a gift hamper, it includes multiple products, but you don't pay that person per product. You pay only one single price. That is nothing but your single price. Any further questions here which I missed out? Please let me know. Yeah, let us look at some questions here, test questions. What is taxable event under GST? 100% this will not be asked in your examination. Just for your revision purposes, it is supply. Supply is the taxable event on which the incidence of GST is triggered. Supply of all goods or services is taxable under GST. Discuss the validity of the statement. Anyone want to answer this? Supply of all goods or service taxable under GST. Definitely, this statement is not valid because supply of goods, all goods and services is not taxed, because there are the goods or services which are not subject to GST and which are not considered neither as a supply nor a supply of goods in schedule number 3. Whether transfer of title or possession is necessary for a transaction to constitute the supply of goods. With respect to if you are looking at supply of goods, definitely you should either transfer the title of the goods or transfer the ownership, or you have to transfer the possession, and after a few years on payment of entire consideration, transfer the total ownership. That is a hire purchase agreement. So definitely for supply of goods, these two have to be clearly fulfilled. Yeah, any further? Yeah, I hope this is clear. Next. State whether the following supplies would be treated as supply of goods or supply of services as per Schedule 2 of the GST Act. The renting of immovable property clearly indicated as a supply of service. There is no controversy here. Then goods forming part of the business assets are transferred or disposed of under the directions carried on by the business, whether or not for the consideration. What is this supply of services or supply of goods? Yeah, as per Schedule 2, you should be able to answer this question. Please take this and try to give it a try. Yeah, next one. Transfer of right in goods without transfer of title in goods. Again, this is a service. Title in goods, fixed property shall pass to the future date, hire purchase agreement, that will be supply of goods. Then determine whether the following supplies amount to composite supplies. Hotel provides 4 days, 3 nights package, wherein the facility of breakfast and dinner is provided along with room accommodation. Whether this is a mixed supply or a composite supply. For original importer, it will still be taxable. Definitely it will be taxable. So whether this is a composite supply, hotel 4 days, 3 nights package where facility of breakfast and dinner is provided along with the room accommodation. Answers are say composite. If it is a composite supply, what is the principal supply? You have to mention that also. What is the principal supply here? The principal supply is the accommodation service, and the auxiliary or incidental supply is your food related services. So therefore, this is a composite supply. Then toothpaste company has offered the scheme of free toothbrush along with toothpaste. Very interesting question. Toothpaste company has, I want a full answer, just not mixed or composite. If it is mixed or composite, what is the rate we have to take in this particular situation? Please answer this question. Toothpaste company has offered the scheme of free toothbrush along with the toothpaste. Good. Nice to see all new names answering. I could see doubts being asked by Kaushiki, Namrata, Janvi. So I was wondering who all. That's the issue with the online classes. I never know how many people are watching. So, but good to see all the answers are there. So mixed, Kaushik, you say mixed supply higher. Higher means which higher of what? That's anyways the correct answer. If the two products are there, which are capable of being sold separately, and it has two different GST rates, the highest rate which is applicable needs to be taken. Whether higher purchase to be considered as goods or service is simple, supply of goods. Now, question. Satyamev Printers is a printing house registered under GST. It receives an order for printing 5,000 copies of book on yoga and meditation, authored by a well-known yoga guru. The content of the book is to be provided by the yoga guru to the Satyamev Printers. It is agreed that Satyamev Printers will use its own paper to print the said books. You are required to determine the GST of rate of GST applicable on supply of printed books, assuming rate applicable on services is 18%, on supply of paper is 12%. Please try to answer this question. Waiting for more answers for this. Is there any specific way or format in which answers need to be given? Definitely it is. There is a specific way or format. We will discuss all of that also. But here, since the time, I just first want to see if you guys have understood the format. If you refer to the study material, most of these questions are taken from the study material. There is a solution. If you just open your study material, if you look at the same problem, the Satyamev Printers problem, if you open the study material and go to page number 2.81, is the solution which is given. The study material gives a very elaborate solution. You don't need to be that elaborate. You don't need to mention the circular number. You don't need to mention the section number. You have to, in this particular question here, how do we answer this question? Okay, how do we answer this question? Let me, so if you just want me to give you an example here, first thing is refer the concept of composite supply. So what will you say? As per the provisions of the CGST Act 2017, this is in case you don't remember the section. You have to say that a composite supply has two or more supplies, out of which one is a principal supply. Correct. So in this particular situation, as per the clarification, so therefore, next refer to the clarification given by the circuit. Again, circular number is not relevant. Circular number is not needed to be remembered. Please don't waste your time in learning the section numbers and circular numbers. When I passed my direct tax and indirect tax exam, I have not written a single section number, nor notification number, nor circular number. But what is there in the section, that you have to write correctly. Fine. That is very, very important. So circular number need not be remembered. Then refer to the clarification. As per the clarification given, whenever the content is being provided by the respective person, in this case, it is a yoga instructor, and the suppliers of paper is being provided by the printer, the principal supply as clarified is the supply of service and the supply of content. Therefore, in this case, this is to be treated as a supply of service. That's all. Okay. Conclude by giving your answer and referring to the principal supply. These are the three things you have to keep in mind when answering the question. So this is the format in which you have to answer the question. Toothpaste and brush is mixed supply, not composite supply, because both are capable of being sold separately. Highest rate will be applicable. Puja, okay, correct. Fine. So this is clear. I hope this answer is clear. Now we go to the next question. See, this is the solution what is given by the study material, but it need not be so elaborate. It is impossible for you to write such an elaborate answer taking into account your time limit. The answers in the study material, suggested answers, etc., are given in an elaborate manner so that you don't have to refer to the provisions again. That is the logic behind giving the elaborate answers. Don't get scared and think that you need to give such a big answer. The question will hardly be for 5 marks. Such a big answer, if you give for 5 marks, you'll finish you'll be able to complete the exam only in 6 hours. Then, next question. Sudama Associates, a registered supplier, disposes the computers owned by the business without consideration, and it does not claim the ITC on such computers. Explain whether the disposal of the computers by Sudama qualifies as deemed supply under Schedule 1. Answers for this? Answers for this? Refer Schedule 1. Important point here is the disposal of assets without consideration or supplies, but the main condition to be satisfied is that the ITC needs to have been availed on the purchase of asset. Here, in this case, ITC has not been claimed, and therefore this transaction is not a deemed supply under Schedule 1. I hope it is clear, this one. No, Vivek, yes, because it is in the business of disposal of computers. No. It doesn't matter in which business. When he says dispose the computers owned by the business, it doesn't mean that it is into the disposal of businesses. And irrespective, he has not claimed the input tax credit on that. Okay, here, a registered supplier disposes the computers owned by the business. So you never know whether here they're into the business of disposing computers. That is not the correct interpretation. I hope it is clear. Next question. Ajatashatru Industries enters into a contract with Chandragupta. This question we will see later because there's a small change in this question. Don't look at this solution at the moment because we have to look at the liquidated damages amendment and come back to this question. It will take some time, so we'll come back to this later. Now we look at this one. Shivaji Private Limited, a registered supplier, supplies the following goods and services for construction of buildings and complexes: excavators for required man period at a per hour rate, manpower for operation of excavators at a per day rate, soil testing and seismic evaluation at a per sample rate. Excavators are invariably hired out along with the operators because simply if the excavator comes, you can't be expected to ride that excavator. It's not some car where we can ride. So usually it is given along with the operators. And operators are supplied only when the excavator is hired out. Obviously, simply why the operator will come. He will not come. For a given month, receipts exclusive of GST of Shivaji Private Limited are as follows: hire charges 18 lakhs, service charges for supply of manpower for operation of excavators 20,000, service charges for soiling testing, seismic evaluation 2,50,000. GST payable, how much? Please find out. Assuming rates, hiring out excavators 12%, supply of manpower, services, and soil testing is 18%. Please try to answer this. Yeah, any queries? Any answers for this? Please try to work out before we look at the solution. So here what is happening? There are two transactions which are there. One, it is into supplying the excavators at a per hour rate, supply the manpower for operation, soil testing and seismic evaluation. These are the three types of services. Here, higher charges of excavators is 18 lakhs. So excavators and operators along with the excavators are one single composite supply, wherein the principal supply is higher charges of excavators and the auxiliary or incidental supply is supply of manpower. Soil testing seismic evaluation is a totally different supply altogether. That is not connected with this one. So this is one composite supply and one individual supply is here. So therefore, here if you see, principal supply is supply of excavators. For that, hiring out of excavators, for that the rate is 12%. Supply of manpower services is along with the excavator. So therefore, for this also same rate has to be applicable. And soil testing seismic evaluation, separate supply altogether, 18% for that has to be taken. So hiring charges for excavators is 18 lakhs, 12% GST, which is 2,16,000. Service charges for supply of manpower. For this 12% needs to be taken, which is 2,400. Why? Because it is an auxiliary supply to the hiring charges. Then soil testing and seismic evaluation service charges is 18% because of individual supply. That is 45,000. I hope you understood how we got this solution. Fine. So that was one elaborate problem on this one. Further questions. Vikramaditya is a salaried employee planning to invest in stocks. He opened a trading account with Vaida brokers. During the month, he undertook future contracts without a physical delivery option. Cash settled on expiry of contract date amounting to 35 lakhs. He needs your advice whether such future contracts undertaken by him amount to supply and are liable to GST. Please bear in mind, whenever there is a no physical delivery option and it is settled via cash, then it is speculative in nature. The moment it is speculative in nature, it is not a goods or services for the purpose of GST. So therefore, in this case, it is not a supply and it is not liable to GST. Next one. Angad Private Limited is engaged in the business of distribution of construction material. As an incentive, Angad Private Limited pays an amount of 75,000 to its employees upon achieving a specified sales target. The incentive is part of the salary and applicable tax is deducted at source as per relevant income tax provisions. Angad Private Limited is of the view that GST is not leviable on such incentive paid. Whether the view taken is correct. Try to answer this problem. This one, sixth one. So here if you see, the clarification is clearly given. Any amounts which are part of the employment contract or agreement, if it is paid to the employee, it is not a supply of goods, not a supply of service as per Schedule 3. So therefore, Angad Private Limited is very much correct. It is not, GST is not leviable on such incentive because it is part of the salary and even tax is deducted at source as per the income tax provisions. So therefore, it is not a supply and no GST is attracted on that. This is a job work related problem. So It's basically an agent related issue here. Nandishwar manufacturers sends certain category of yarn for processing to the job worker. The job worker undertakes the processing work as per the requirement. During the process, the job worker uses his own material also. Processed yarn is sold by Nandishwar directly from the job worker's premises. Balance quantity is sent back to by the job worker to Nandishwar manufacturers. The job worker is of the opinion that he is using his own material also in processing, and hence the supply to Nandishwar manufacturers is in the nature of supply of goods as well as services. Do you agree with the opinion of the job worker? Please try to answer this question. If you see this particular question, it is covered in Schedule 2, wherein it clearly given that if any activity is undertaken on the goods of any other person, it is to be treated as a supply of service by virtue of Schedule 2. So therefore, even though he uses his own material, that doesn't matter in any way. It is to be treated as a supply of service only. Fine. Processing activity to be treated as supply of service only. Mokshabhumi Industries has its manufacturing unit in state of Maharashtra. It stores the finished goods manufactured by it at a depot located in state of Gujarat. The depot is owned by Punyabhumi Limited, a related person of Mokshabhumi. Punyabhumi has not charged any consideration from Mokshabhumi for usage for storage purpose. Whether the storage of goods permitted by Punyabhumi to Mokshabhumi Industries qualifies as supply under GST. Good. I'm able to see the answers. Next. Don't worry, material is used by the job worker. Since we didn't cover the job worker related provision, so that part of it there is a confusion. Don't worry. Once you cover the job work related provisions, which I'll only be taking along with input tax credit, you'll be able to, it will be clear that even if job worker uses the material, it is not relevant. Anyways, that will also be considered as a service. So in this particular situation, both are related persons. Once the both are related persons, what happens immediately? Schedule 1 will get triggered. Transaction between related persons, even though they are no consideration, is qualifies as a supply under GST. Here, though, for here storage services is being provided by this Punyabhumi to Mokshabhumi, but for which no consideration is taken. But since they are related persons, it is to be treated as a supply under GST. Very clear. Next one, kindly go through this problem. Rob shareholding and approved intermediary has entered into a transaction where certain securities were lent to Dandan Bank under the Securities Lending Scheme 1997. Dandan Bank shall pay specified lending fee against such lending of securities to it. Explain the taxability of the transactions as per the Securities Lending Scheme 1997. We saw this very clearly. In case of securities lending scheme, there are two things. The moment you charge a lending fee from the borrower, and apart from that, you also charge a commission. The intermediary charges a commission. So here, lending fee is paid by Dandan Bank against such lending to it. This will be chargeable to tax. And apart from that, this intermediary will be paid a commission. So he will also be chargeable to tax here. So therefore, these are the two transactions which are there, which we covered in our discussion. So I hope it is clear, this one. Krishnadev is a trader based in India. Ramakrishna, brother of Krishnadev, is located in China, also engaged in the business of trading of goods. Krishnadev places an order with Ramakrishna for procurement of certain goods from local market in China. Before the shipment from China to India, Krishnadev sold such goods to Cristiano, a trader located in Brazil. The goods were subsequently shipped from China to Brazil. Comment on the taxability. This also we have seen. This is in the nature of merchant trading, out and out transactions. Here it goes from one non-taxable territory to another non-taxable territory without coming into India. So therefore, it will not be chargeable to tax. We have discussed this situation very clearly. This also is a very simple question wherein import of goods is there, endorsement of title has happened. It is not chargeable to tax as per the clarification which is given. So here if you see the sale of transaction before it's in the high seas also. Mohandas sold the goods by endorsement of title where it is in high seas. This is not a supply. But later he says Mohandas shall purchase back in the goods from Radhakrishnan Expo's house. So what transaction here is? On this transaction there is no GST. But Radhakrishnan Export House will pay the GST on the import of goods from Italy. That will happen. And then when this Mohandas purchases the goods, he will pay domestic GST from this Radhakrishnan Export House. I hope you understood. This transaction is not subject to GST. So what are the transactions subject to GST here? Import by Radhakrishna Export House and import by Radhakrishnan Export House. And the next one is domestic sale or by Radhakrishnan Export House to Mohandas International. Fine. These are the two transactions which will be very much chargeable to tax. Fine. Then Mr. Happy had a huge residential property located at a prime location in Mumbai, Maharashtra. He let out the first and second floor to Mr. Peace for residential purposes in April. Mr. Peace surrenders his tenancy rights to Mr. Serene for a tenancy premium of 10 lakhs. Serene also paid the applicable stamp duty on the transfer of tenancy rights. Moreover, a monthly rent of 1 lakh. Taxability of the transactions given in the above case. So tenancy rights is very much covered under supply of service. Even though the stamp duty and registration charges are applicable, it will very much subject to GST. So just because a registration is there, you cannot say that it is a supply of goods. Fine. So therefore, transfer of tenancy rights is not like a sale of land or building, but it is a supply of service. It is a supply of service. Of course, there is we'll need to cover the exemptions chapter also to understand some issues. So don't worry, we'll cover that. Monthly rent of 1 lakh rupees to Mr. Happy from June is there. Renting of residential property is exempt from GST. We'll cover that in the exempt topics. So here, this 1 lakh rupees rent is exempt from GST. Just some problems are also have the matter and provisions of other chapters. So once you cover the other chapters, these problems will get more clear. I think this also we have seen. I gave an example. Donation by that respective person as a mark of gratitude will not be a consideration. But if he gives the name of the company, it is very much a transaction or activity qualified as supply. Fine. I hope this 13th question can be answered by you. Then some further mixed composite supplies related question. Please go through it. Try to work out this. If any doubts, you please ask me. Supply of laptop along with laptop bag for 55,000. Yeah, so this is a big question. Let me see if the entire questions are here. Or let me cover this. Yeah, so therefore, let me just enlarge the screen. Yeah, Mrs. Kajal, a registered supplier of Jaipur, Rajasthan, has made the following supplies in the month of January. Supply of laptop along with the laptop bag to a customer of Mumbai for 55,000 exclusive of GST. This is there. Supply of 10,000 kits at 50 each amounting to 5 lakhs exclusive of GST Ram Fancy Store in Kota. Each kit consists of one hair oil, one beauty comb and one hair comb. 100 kits are given as free gift to Jaipur customers on occasion of Kajal's birthday. Each kit consists of one hair oil and one beauty soap. Cost of each kit is 35. Event management services provided free of cost to her brother, wholly dependent on her, for his son's marriage function in Indore. Cost of providing the service is 80,000. 1,400 chairs and 100 coolers are hired out to function Jara for 3,30,000, including cost of transportation from go down to function garden. Since Kajal is not a GTA, transportation services are exempt via notification. Very exhaustive problem. Please try to work out this. Here we have to work out what is the taxable value and what is the respective GST which is chargeable to tax. Okay, please try to work out this problem. Here you just have to see what is the rate of GST applicable. That's all. Taxable value, it need not be there. What is the rate of GST which is applicable? For laptop, what is the rate? For this one, what is the rate of GST? So please try to work out this problem at home after you revise the concepts of mixed and composite supply, and we will discuss the solution in our next class. Now, we have some time left, thankfully, to cover why I was waiting for. You must have remembered that one section I purposefully left out. There is a reason for that. Kindly open your supplementary study paper. All of you, I hope you have downloaded it. If not, please download it from the BOS portal. Okay, supplementary study paper. If you see, we'll go through the amendments, 2 amendments which we already covered. Let me just share the screen. Yeah, so in this, the supplementary study paper, we have covered these amendments. This is your club and association amendment, and also perquisites related amendment is covered. This is the important point. 3rd August 2022, clarification regarding GST applicability on liquidated damages, compensation and penalty arising from the breach of contract or other provisions of law. This is what we are going to discuss now. If you see, what do you mean by the term liquidated damages? If you are entering into a contract and you fail to perform any particular services, the person who is paying you will charge some liquidated damages, right? Let me give you an example. You are a construction contractor. You are supposed to construct the house within 6 months, but 6 months is over, you have not constructed the house still. So therefore, the total contract value is say 8 lakhs, and you have defaulted in that 6 months. You have not done. So the agreement says that if you are not completing it, you have to pay liquidated damages of 50,000. That is, contractor will pay to the contractee 50,000 rupees. For this, clarifications was given. So therefore, what is the main important point here? What was the clarification which was given? That in case of liquidated damages, first of all, the government was considering whether there is a supply or not, because you are paying something for non-performance. But GST, the taxable incident, that is the incidence of taxable event itself is supply. So where there is no supply, where is the question of GST? That is why clarifications were given. With regard to compensation, liquidated damages, if you are committing a breach of contract and penalties arising, what is to be done? So what all are covered here? Okay, GST applicability on liquidated damages, compensation and penalty. Fine. If you see in Schedule 2, what we discussed here, agreeing to the obligation to refrain from an act or to tolerate an act or situation or to do an act. This clearly is being given as a supply of service in Schedule 2, what we discussed today. So these 3 are there. Refrain from an act, that is not do an act. Tolerate an act, that is you do an act but I tolerate it. And next one is agreeing to the obligation to do the act. So we will examine each of these 3 points clearly. First one, agreement to the obligation to refrain from an act. Non-compete agreements. If I have a electronics shop in one place, my friend also wants to open a shop in the other place. I tell him, boss, you don't open here because I am doing. So he refrains from opening that shop there. Fine. So therefore, builder refraining from constructing more than certain number of floors, though permitted, against a compensation paid by neighborhood housing project which wants to protect with sunlight, or industrial unit refraining from manufacturing activity because one school is there nearby. These are some examples. Tolerate an act or situation. Shopkeeper is there. There is a hawker opposite his shop on a payment selling some product. You hawker tell, give me monthly payment. I will give you something. Then Resident Welfare Association tolerating the use of loudspeakers for early morning prayers. So these are all some of the acts there. So agreeing to the obligation to tolerate, agreeing to refrain. I hope these two you got clarity. And the third one, agreeing to the obligation to do an act, where industrial unit agrees to install equipment or zero emission at the behest of Resident Welfare Association, when the amount is given by the Resident Welfare Association. Though there is no legal obligation to do so, they do it for this. So what are the conditions to be complied for these three activities? There must be an express or implied agreement or contract. For these three, there has to be a proper agreement. Second, consideration must flow in return. Whatever be the agreement or contract, there has to be a agreement for refraining, tolerating, and doing. So we are now going to discuss the liquidated damages taxability first. What does it say? Any party entering into a contract will specify that in case there is a breach, some damages will have to be paid. So, clarification. This is only most important from your examination point of view. This one. Please mark it very clearly in your supplementary paper. Liquidated damages cannot be said to be a consideration received for tolerating. They are rather payments for not tolerating the breach of contract. So payment is to ensure performance and to deter non-performance, unsatisfactory or delayed performance. They are a measure of loss and damage for each party. Fine. A contract is entered into execution and not for its breach. The liquidated damages, no one desires that. They want the work to be over first. So therefore, this clarification is given. So if you see here, the end point where the amount paid as liquidated damages is only for compensation or to refrain or tolerate or do anything in that particular situation, they do not constitute consideration and are not taxable. Very, very important clarification. Based on this only, one problem only was there for which answer was different before. Now the answer will be different. What are the examples? Damages result from damage to property, penalty for delayed construction, forfeiture of earnest money by seller in case of breach to sell the immovable property. Deposit is given, but construction he didn't do. He forfeited that deposit. Okay, the person forfeited that deposit. That also examples are there. What is the key in such cases? Whether they constitute consideration for another independent contract or tolerating, etc. Okay, or refraining from doing. If the answer is yes, it is a supply, irrespective of what its name is called. Otherwise, it is not a supply. So, whether the payments are consideration for another contract, we have to see. If I get liquidated damages, instead of the liquidated damages, is there some other contract being provided? You have to check that very, very clearly, carefully. If some other contract is there, then it is supply. If not, it is not a supply. Fine. Just go through this paper. It's these various clarifications. On the contract, this is the detailed clarification which is given. Some examples: contract may provide the payment by recipient of goods or services shall be made before a due date, and failure to make the payment shall attract a late fee or penalty. Contract for transport of passengers may stipulate ticket amount shall be partially forfeited if passenger does not show. Contract for package tour may stipulate forfeiture of security deposit on the event of cancellation of multiple things. Fine. Amount. So if you look at the above examples, the amount paid for acceptance of late payment, early termination of fees, amount forfeited, etc. are a part of the commercial terms, supply of facility, early termination, etc. Even though they may be referred to as fine or penalty, are actually payments that amount to consideration for supply, where the supply is taxable. Fine. So therefore, if you see here, very, very thin line of difference is there. These are the various examples are there. If a contract is there and contract is given a clause for violation, that will be very much chargeable to tax. Check to dishonor, fine or penalty. Supplier wants payment to be received, does not want check to be dishonored. There is never a contract saying that if you dishonor the check, there is a fine. The fine is imposed for not tolerating the situation. Therefore, check denial is not a consideration and not tax. So check, or you can expect questions based on everything. Since it's a new amendment, we have to formulate some questions based on this. I will definitely formulate some questions and give it to you for your exercise. On this, 100% you will expect. Please mark it very, very important. You will definitely can expect a question based on this one. Penalty imposed for violation of laws such as traffic violation, etc. are not consideration. No, not tax. You are violating a law. Is there any supply which you are providing? You are doing some violation. So therefore, in this particular situation also, they are not leviable to tax. Forfeiture of salary or payment of bond amount. Sometimes when employee is joining, if he leaves within 1 year, he will pay one deposit amount and that amount will be forfeited by the employer. In that situation, this forfeiture of salary or bond amount in the event are incorporated in the contract to discourage non-serious candidates from taking up the employment. The said amounts are recovered by the employer not as a consideration for tolerating or premature, but for not taking this. Therefore, employer also does not get return. Amount recovered by the employer is not taxable because this is a situation where there is no supply or no service. Late payment, surcharge, etc. Again, this is there very much in the contract. So therefore, it is very much chargeable to tax. You cannot say it is like the check dishonor or penalty. Fixed charges for the power. Discoms, you have minimum fixed charge per unit charge. Although anyways it is exempt, sale of electricity is exempt. Just in case for discussion sake, the minimum fixed charges will always be the same, whereas it is for tolerating the act of not scheduling or consuming the minimum. Cancellation charges, hotel accommodation, etc. Again, if it is bundled in the contract, is very much, please go through all of this. The facilitation supply of following cancellation, intended supply, or is in case assessed as the principal supply. So since this is relating to the contract, then very much it is chargeable to tax. Fine. So these are some of the important clarifications with relates to liquidated damages and agreement for tolerating or not performing an act. Right. So now we come back to this particular problem, which we skipped because of this one, this actor ka problem. This one. Ajatashatru Industries enters into a contract with an actor to act as a brand ambassador. Duration is 5 years. Contract fee is 50 lakhs per annum. As per the terms of the contract, if contract is terminated by Chandragupta before the end of the contract period, he will have to repay 50% of the contract fee. At the end of the 3rd year, he terminates the contract. He has received the contract fee for 3 years at the time of termination of the contract. Again here, since it is very, very clearly given, as per the contract, it is auxiliary to the main supply. It is auxiliary to the main supply of providing as a brand ambassador. Therefore, it is chargeable to tax, even though it is for toleration of the non-performance. So very much it is supply, this one, because it is there in the contract and it is auxiliary to the main contract. So in this particular situation, 50 lakhs into 3 years into 50% is the supply of service, and which is very much chargeable to tax. Fine. I hope these questions are clear, and I hope the clarification is good. Kindly go through the supplementary study paper. It is very, very important from your examination point of view, and critical amendments, what you have to read at the end, therefore, is clarification on liquidated damages. That is very, very important here. And I'll mention my email ID here because for clarification of doubts, which you will get later, so that you can ask. You can please send out emails to me in case you're getting stuck anywhere, and it will be my pleasure to respond. So therefore, with this, we come to the end of chapter 2, concept of supply. Just to give you a brief as to what all we have discussed. We discussed section 7 in detail, along with Schedule 1, 2, and 3. Schedule 1 speaks about the activities without consideration, which is qualified as supply. Schedule 2 speaks about activities which are to be treated as supply of goods or supply of service. Schedule 3 talks about the activities which are neither the supply of goods nor the supply of service. Then we saw section 8, which is mixed and composite supply, when it is a mixed supply and when it is composite supply, how to tax the composite supply, how to tax the mixed supply. We have seen that. And then post that, we came to our worked out multiple problems based on what we discussed. And also the recent amendments where you have to focus upon is the first retrospective amendment of adding this 7 subsection 1AA, services or goods supplied by clubs or association to its members. Very, very important from the examination point of view. And also another important point is clarification with regard to perquisites given to the employees. If any perquisites are there given to the employees, perquisites is mentioned in the employment contract, it is covered under Schedule 3, not chargeable to tax. Clarification is given. Apart from that, the major amendment or major clarification, not amendment as such, is related to liquidated damages. Main important point, you have to keep it in mind. If the liquidated damages flows out as of a contract, then in that particular situation, it is a service and subject to GST. But if it is an agreement to refrain from an act or to tolerate an act, in that particular situation, like check, dishonor, or fine will be 100% asked in your examination, and all the other transactions which are discussed very clearly in the supplementary study paper. That is the exact text of the clarification which was given. So I hope this point is clear. Any further queries, please feel free to email it to me. So let's end it for today. Thank you very much once again for joining the session. I hope this session was of value to you. The most important point, as always, I keep saying, is that you need to revise properly for your once the session is done. Just after attending the session, please don't forget and don't think that you have the knowledge, because very easily sometimes you'll be able to forget it, and it becomes a bit problematic for you to later try to revise. You'll not be able to remember properly. So my only request is to kindly go through in your study material. There is a section called Let Us Recapitulate. Please go through that. It hardly takes 3 to 4 minutes. You all are very lucky with regard to the study material which is formulated, the way in which it is done. It is very, very nicely done, very, very easy to understand. When we were there, there was not much difference between the study. When I was a student, the study material and the bare act almost looked the same. But now you have some interesting graphics with all the flow charts, etc., to able to understand and grasp the contract, the content better. So I would seriously request you to please, after you log out of today, don't immediately stop. Please open your study material, go through the Let Us Recapitulate session. It hardly takes 5 minutes. Please, a sincere request from my side. And once you go through all of that, in case you have any doubts, you'll immediately be able to ask me in the next session. So please go through that. And the next session of mine will be on the 14th, where we shall cover the topic of charge of GST, where we shall look at the reverse charge concept, forward charge concept, the list of services which are subject to reverse charge mechanism, and then if time permits, we go to the exemptions chapter. One another change is charge of GST and exemptions were given only one session, that is on day after tomorrow, but that one session is not enough. So I have personally requested for another session for exemptions. So therefore, you'll have 2 sessions. Charge of GST will be covered in the next class, where exemptions I will start. Then exemptions will have another topic separately that I don't know whether it is updated in the schedule. That will be happening on Sunday, 6 p.m. I know it is a Sunday, but please don't have any plans other than listening to me. I'm sorry to spoil your Sunday evening, but I feel another class for exemption is required. So the next class will be on Friday. Then we shall meet on Sunday and cover the exemption stuff. So thank you very much. Have a good day. Good night. Please do revise.